Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today is Sunday, April the 10th, 2022, and today is an open forum, open discussion or question and answer. So if you have any questions for me, I will try my best to answer them, and or if you have a particular topic that you want to address, uh, you know, this is the opportunity to do so. So, with that and more, coming in just a moment when we return. Peace, peace, peace. Again, welcome to the program. I see I'm a little dark actually on this side, and I'm not in my normal space where I have my uh, big light in the front. I do have this little light, but it's not doing much of anything. I don't know how long I will have the light on or the camera on for this evening, but that is neither here nor there. For those who don't know as of yet, I am back here in Philadelphia. And so right now I'm at Swarthmore College, and, just in the office here. And so I just figured, take some time off from doing my other duties, and to see what is going on in these internet streets and what's on your mind. And so, as always, I like to welcome each and every one of you who are listening live, and of course, those of you who are catching the archive. And so, like to give a shout out to those who have made themselves known in the chat. So peace and blessings to Robert Rand. New York is in the building. Peace and blessings to Kat and Donnie Williams. He says, I need a 2-hour show on the road. So he's either going or coming back from somewhere. And so love and light to Sister Tamika One. And as she says, support the channel. You can do so via CashApp and by liking and thumbing up the video. So make sure that you do that. LA, Oklahoma is in the building. Aaron Edwards and Edward Nigma 9x9 and Stephen McKenzie. Peace and blessings to you, good brother. And D. Centavo. Unc Oma Janeb is in the building, and Verdina Cornish is in the building. Peace and blessings to you. Done with it is in the building. Thank you for joining us. EJG, aka Shango, is in the building, and I'll come back to your question in just a little bit. Pure Black is in the building. Peace and blessings. Marcus McGee. Sister LaDasha Wright is in the house. Thank you for joining. Amar Berry, peace and blessings to you. And Zane Montego is in the house. Brother Conan Lee across the waters. And Picasso has arisen from the ancestral realm and has joined the conversation. And so today's conversation is an open discussion, as mentioned earlier. And if you want to, ask a question or join the conversation, you can hit the link at the top. Matter of fact, let me just make sure that I pin the link to the top. Peace and blessings, boom, in the building. Let me go back up here. And so the link to join the panel is pinned now to the top of the chat for those of you who are viewing us from YouTube. And it should be for those of you who are viewing via the asarimhotep Facebook page. You should be able to see the link there as well if you want to join. So before we get into the nitty gritty of things, I just want to remind everyone that on April the 30th and May the 1st, that's at the end of this month, the beginning of next month, the One Africa Power and Unity Conference will be going on in Detroit at the DoubleTree Hotel. And we have an array of scholars who are going to be presenting on these 2 days. And I think a few more has actually been added. But I think they will announce that this week. But thus far, it is going to consist of Dr. Milana Karena, Professor Bayina Bello, Professor James Smalls, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Chike Okua, Brother Jabari Osaze, Dr. Theophilo Benga, Dr. Susan Tata, Dr. Malefe Kiti-Asante, Mfudishi Jehuti Mess, and your brother asarimhotep. So it is going to be a jam-packed weekend. And for those of you who are going to be live in the building in Detroit, there is also a gala after the event on Saturday. So, starting in the early morning to around 6 p.m. is going to be the actual conference for Saturday. And then starting at 8 p.m. Till I'm not sure what time, there will be a kind of a formal gala and kind of a party event at the hotel that evening. So for those of you who will be in Detroit and live, it's going to be a very fun-filled and educational weekend. So make sure that you get your tickets at hoppyfilm.com. And this is the link here. And that's either to purchase tickets for the in live part of the discussion, or if you can't make it to Detroit, they will be streaming it live. So either streaming tickets or in-person tickets, make sure that you hit up hoppyfilm.com. And as an FYI, towards the beginning of August, I will be releasing Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1, Towards a Meaning for the Place Named Kemet. This will be my full and exhaustive analysis on the debate on the meaning of Kemet. And so it will be available in August. So just keep your ears to the streets, and you will be informed of when the actual date of the release will be, and the nature of what's included. Just doing some final touches on it now, and it will be available soon. And what else we got going on? Of course, we have the documentary film, China Into, which we have the brief trailer, which goes a little something like,
you see, I have a lot of things A lot of things that's on my mind, and I would like to let them out. Look, I see reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you. Okay, yeah. Okay.
That's right. We are still doing the initial fundraising. We're trying to raise $5,000, and we just recently went over the 4,000 mark. And so we still got a little ways to go, and we'll be going to Egypt. It was originally scheduled for February, but many of y'all know what was going on, where it had to be rescheduled. So we'll be going back in the fall, and so the fundraising efforts will continue until we hit our $5,000 mark. And so you can go to chianaintofilm.com to make a donation if you would like to help in the efforts of putting together this trailer, because we will be doing a bigger fundraiser, for which the trailer will be kind of the proof of concept for that. So make sure that you go to chianaintofilm.com, and you can support there. And I think that's about it. Outside of course, I have this book out, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, an Ancient Egyptian Ak, an exploratory etymological study. That was released in 2021. Also released in 2021 is Muntu wa Nzambi by Dr. Chinemalema Mukinge out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, subtitled A Portrait of Human of God's Special Creation. And as you all know, that I have created a publishing entity, and it is Maduandela Press. And you can purchase those texts at maduandelapress.com and get your copy today. So lastly, you can visit the Spreadshirt, which the link is in the description. And you can also support by purchasing, one of these shirts that we have, under the title of Rude Boy Juju or Ma'at Thematics, which a few of them will be coming out this summer. So, check those out. And with that said, remember that this is an open discussion. And so you can go to the link that is at the top of the chat and join the discussion. I see we have Brother Lionel already in the queue, and we will bring him on in just a second. But I want to, and I think I lost it already, and I forgot. Somebody had asked a question. I think this is it. Let me make sure I get it. Okay, so what is your thoughts on the critical race theory issue? I think that, the strategy of misinformation is alive and well regarding critical race theory. First and foremost, critical race theory is a subject that is, for the most part, taught in graduate courses. And so, the fear that critical race theory would be taught in like high schools or middle schools or something like that is just hogwash. And secondly, critical race theory has to deal with an analysis of the legal precedences that the laws that were implemented, based on race in all of the history of the United States. So it's an examination of actual law. That's what critical race theory is. And so, everybody has I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what is being taught. It's just American history as applied to racist laws in the United States. That's all that really is. So I don't know what more to say in regards to that. So let me continue down here. I see we have a few more people who have made themselves known. The learning curve. Peace and blessings to you. He said, yes. Zayna said, I see you're off the road and have settled in. Yeah, I'm still settling in, still getting some things done. But yeah, I'm officially back in a 215 in this John and getting busy, getting to work. Let me see. He says, I did not want to say hi since it means staying up late tonight. I understand. Yeah, Monday is usually a work day for everyone. So I'm not trying to keep everyone up late. I just wanted to, open the channels up for discourse and we'll kind of see where it goes. Let me see. I said, what's up to Sister Ladasha, Brother Any Herod. Calfani is in the building. Peace and blessings, pure black. I am that I am is in the building. San Diego, sending life, prosperity, and health. And the same back to you. And everything is in the building. And let me see. Marcus McGee, I'll be there. Can't wait. Marcus said he's going to be in the building in Detroit and can't wait to meet some of y'all. Let me see. This is a song like he in lockup making moves, but he really locked himself up in the library for real. I wish. I was just at the Princeton in New Jersey library, and in the DT section, that's where I was. I was looking for a book by Mabika Kalanda, Revelation du Tiakani, and it was published in 1992. And so it's in the middle of just, rows and rows of books on Congo and Bantu culture. And, and this is the book was in the Princeton Seminary library. So this wasn't even the main library, it was in the seminary library. So they just got a relatively new building to house the books. So the library is serious when they just don't have open rows of books. You have to twist and turn these kind of wheels to move the shelves left and right for you to walk through the aisles. So that's how many books they got. They can't just do the standing rows. You have to twist the rows, and so I was trying to move in, but they weren't having that. So maybe next time. Let me see, Brother Sar. Have you read or checked out the book A Journey Through the Beyond by Zago? It's about the Amduat. If so, some brief thoughts. No, I have not. And so I'm going to make sure that I jot down this title and check it out when I can, because the Amduat is a very important book. There's this one book I do have. It's a big book on the Amduat. I don't know how comparable it is to this text, but I will definitely check it out. Let's see. This is a SAR broadcasting live from the cell in Rikers. Nah, I doubt they have dry erase boards in the cells. But this is an office. You can't really see much. It's a desk. I'm on the desk. Some shelves, some bookshelves up here. I know this look kind of crazy back here. Yeah, that makes it look like in these old school brick school walls. But no, I'm at a university. Um, Tamika says she got that book. He says, I heard them African Americans with culture coming after you, sir. Yeah, I haven't even had time to watch the videos. I've skimmed through these so-called responses, and it's clear that they didn't watch the video. So whether I do a response or not, I got to see how much time I have. Yes, this is the link that you can go to the Spreadshirt to purchase one of the t-shirts, and there's many other designs than what you just saw up there. Has meta nature been deciphered? Yeah, that's a pretty old debate, or non-debate actually. It says CRT taught in LAUSD. Why do African Americans accept Marxist paradigms? I don't know. You would have to ask an African or an African American who accepts Marxist paradigms to find out why they accept Marxist paradigms. You can't blanket, you hundreds of millions of people, and I'm pretty sure hundreds of millions of people have never even read Marxist. Let me see, Brother Kansu, peace and blessings to you. Peace and blessings to Olarisha Adesina. Thank you for joining us. Miss Tiffany is in the building. I'm not sure if I said that good guy already, but if not, peace and blessings to you. Chatty Patty is in the building. And thank you to Picasso for your donation. He says, name 3 books that every African of the diaspora should own in regards to African history. Let me see. That's going to be hard because it really just depends on the focus, because African history is world history. But in just terms of strictly continental African history, that's a very broad thing. So one text that I know we should all have is Dr. Chancellor Williams' The Destruction of Black Civilization. That's a must. And I would say Dr. Malana Karanga's and I think Molefe Asante's Introduction to Black Studies. It's a textbook created for freshmen in their Introductory to Black Studies courses. And secondly, even though it's not necessarily Black history per se, you should just have this book regardless. And that is Dr. Amos Wilson's Blueprint for Black Power. And so I think those are 3 books among many that you should get. But remember that, when we're talking about African culture and history, there's a wide thing. So whether you want to, focus on economics, whether you want to focus on just culture and language, whether you want to focus on religion or philosophy, there's, tons and tons of texts that you can read. So those texts are very broad in a sense. He says, I've never heard someone say John so proper. Indeed. Let me see. Berdina Cornish asks, were the Dogons originally living in Egypt before they moved to their present location? I can't say that they were, but I would argue that they are a related people to the original Remech or the Egyptians, and they probably shared a common geographical space during the Green Sahara. And so there's not much of the culture of the Dogon that says that they lived in that space in terms of pharaonic Egypt along the Nile. but there are aspects of their culture that says that they are part of the parent culture that gave birth to both the Dogon and the ancient Egyptians. And because their thought is there's continuity, but in reality, in my personal opinion, the Dogon's thought is a bit more advanced than the ancient Egyptian. Now, you may not see it in terms of their material culture in the way that the ancient Egyptians, but in terms of the philosophy and the religion aspect, there's, in my personal opinion, they're more advanced than the ancient Egyptians on that. But you can tell they come from uh, a common ancestry, which is proven by the linguistics as well. Let me see. Mr. Untouchable says, "What up, Asar? Is the book finished yet?" I'm assuming you're speaking about uh, the Egyptian identity book. For the most part, it is. It's still going through some revisions and the like. So I'll have an exact August date sometime soon, but we're close. And he says CRT is a Marxist theory, correct? I don't think so. Again, it's just an analysis of exactly the laws of the United States. And so I'm pretty sure that there are some parallel ideas in terms of class dealing with Marxists, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a Marxist theory. So, maybe I can get someone on the program who that is their expertise, and we can hash that out sometime in the near future. He says, "What are your contestations with Ned or Ned? He seems to stay concentrated on your works and you guys and differences in scholarship. Care to elaborate?" Yeah, it's just simple that he is an individual who is new to a lot of this information, and he likes to argue with people about information. And when he's corrected by individuals about his information, he takes personal offense and thinks that you are attacking him as a person. And this has been going on for years. And so, he doesn't want to humble himself and just be a student. He wants to read something real quick and then become a teacher. And he wants to argue with people who have decades and teaching experience on these particular types of subjects. And he's always misrepresenting information. He takes some little bit of information but doesn't comprehend it in its whole. And so, when in the past, when we pointed this stuff out to him, he gets very defensive. He wants to cuss everyone out and wants to fight. And he has blocked me on Facebook for challenging his thought. And so ever since then, he's just had a personal vendetta. And so, like, every other week, there's a video made about me. And we've tried giving him a platform so that he can demonstrate his points, but he just falls short each and every time. And so I just let him be. He can make as many videos as he wants. But yeah, that's just it. It's just personal. I don't know what's going on in his life, but he has a character issue. And so, he only rocks with you if you agree with him. When you disagree with him, then he takes it as a personal attack, like you're coming to kill him. So he wants to be on a defensive. And so it's just he doesn't comprehend a lot of things. And so I don't engage with him, because you'll be wasting your time trying to help him to understand certain basics, because he doesn't want to be a student. He just wants to get on and teach, and he's just not there yet, in my personal opinion. That's just my take. And I'm gonna get you in, brother Lionel, in just a sec. He said 42 Tribes says CRT is American fool conservative boogeyman nonsense. It has little to do with Marxism. I think you really need to study uh, critical race theory a bit more. Let me see. Conan Lee says rolling stacks of books like a sailor, indeed. Shakespeare, I live in Los Angeles. At which school is CRT being taught? Yeah, that's a good question. Peace and blessings, Emmanuel Dama. Peace and blessings, Rowan Fall in the building. Mr. Untouchable says, have you done a commentary on Dr. Malefe Asante embracing humanism yet? Um, no, and I'm just recently been made aware of the whole, you know, uh, Afrocentricity International separating from him on this point, which I don't, I have to talk with our good brother Omawale, because I'm not sure how in depth he is on African culture in terms of study, but what you're calling humanism is the basis of African culture. And so if Dr. Malefe Asante is associating humanism, he's not abandoning Afrocentricity, because to be African centered is to have a human centered analysis. And so I would have to read his new book, because allegedly the new book is what I guess is the straw that broke the camel's back, and I would really have to listen to Omawale and anybody else in uh, Afrocentricity International to see uh, to what extent that this is even a valid concern. Um, because if they're trying to argue that African people had a race consciousness prior to meeting Europeans and Arabs, that is false. And their concentration was on being human in Muntu and the like, in Inian among the Yoruba folks and the like, in the Remech. And so the philosophy, whether you call it humanism or not, is built into the fabric of African philosophy and religion. And so, I just haven't had time. I've been focused on the move to really engage in that. So I really don't have much commentary on that. Let me see. So broadcasting live from Umar Johnson School somewhere in VA. Yeah. Congratulations on the books. Thank you very much. And let me see. What methods books would you recommend for each discipline you study? History, linguistics. I would have to compile that for you. Matter of fact, let me note that. Um, I think that'd be a good program, just to uh, show at least for me, that I've personally read in terms of research in different fields that I engage in. So make list of uh, research methods books for interest. Boom. So that'll be a show coming up. Maybe it'll be this weekend. So peace and blessings. Thank you for that. What's next is the main aspect of CRT argues that white supremacy is on cruise control. When black people speak against it, they in turn demonstrate it. Yes. But in terms of quote unquote white supremacy and the like, that's a 6,000 plus year history. It's on autopilot. That's the nature of culture. You perform your culture without thinking about it, and so that's ingrained with it. Thank you to Brother Kansu um, for the donation. Appreciate it very much. And it looks like I will. Let me see. I'm going to pause right here and bring our brother Lionel into the conversation. And remember that this is an open discussion. So you can, if you want to join the panel, you can click on the link for those of you who are watching on YouTube that is pinned to the top of the chat. So peace and blessings, brother Lionel. How you
What's up, brother? I'm doing all right. Um, hey, brother, sorry, I got a couple questions.
doing? Alrighty.
Okay, the first one, since you back in your base of operations, have you checked out the vid I sent you yet with Robin and Dana?
I did, but it's nothing. It's nothing really new. I'm familiar with Sister Dana and her work, and I've been knowing her for years, and
Oh,
even
for real?
engaged with her. So yeah, so like nothing that she said on the program was anything new and revealing to me in terms of her research. So I'm not new to her at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I was surprised when I had like interviewed her. I was surprised she was still around. And I was even more surprised about what she looked like. I was like, oh my god, like Jesus, distracted. But my second question is, okay, you're a academic, right, Asar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know, in a couple of years, in a few months, I'm gonna have my bachelor's I'm gonna have my bachelor's in general studies with a minor in history, right?
Okay.
And here's a history question that I often like struggle with because I asked all my history professors this, and now I'm gonna ask you.
Okay.
Okay, what, how much should we put validity on secondary source documents? And I'm going to give an example. I
Mm-hmm.
hate to always bring up the Egypt question, but you hear people on the internet that say stuff like, well, the experts say that the Egyptians were neither black nor white. Now, this is my question. The reason why I ask how much should we give credence to secondary source documents is because all of these people who are writing on Egypt, they weren't there to really make that conclusion that they were either black nor white. And even with like the Greek argument, when they tell us that Egypt comes from the south, the Ethiopians made it. Now people want to start saying stuff like, "Well, wasn't Diodorus Sicu? Could he have been wrong?" But we believe everything with the Greeks when it comes to math, science, law, the gymnasium, etc. So, how much do we give credence to like secondary sources over primary?
I mean, it's in the title of what we name it. You know, primary sources is always going to have priority. Secondary sources is good in the absence of the primaries. So, for example, there are a few uh, ancient Greek documents that are copies of earlier documents that are attributed to other Greek philosophers and scholars. We may not have the primaries from them, but we have the information that was recorded from students. And so uh, it becomes a good source of information. It's not going to hold as strong as a direct primary source, but it's still valid. It would still have to be in concert with other lines of evidence. When it comes to when the Greeks were describing the ancient Egyptians, that is those are primary sources. Those, when Diodorus Siculus or Plutarch or Herodotus or whatnot speaks about the ancient Egyptians, they spoke about what they saw. That was their own descriptions about them. So it
Right.
wasn't, you don't read in the text that the Libyans told me, the Jews told me, the Syrians told me. No, I saw this is what they look like. And so
Hmm.
these are primary sources from the times of the of pharaonic times. And this combined with how the actual Egyptians depicted themselves dominantly for 3,000 years. And
Right.
in terms of the wall paintings, in terms of the actual wood carvings and the like. So when you juxtapose that and then the tertiary evidence, for example, the hieroglyphs of the face, the her face that has the wide nose and big lips of the
Hmm.
African, the curly hair glyph, etc., etc. The word for skin being the word for like cow skin, which lets you know that you know the the people had to have been a dark colored people for their word for skin to be the word for the dark colored cows and bulls, etc. So when you combine all of these things together, it is illogical to assume that they were not that their phenotype was not of similar to my phenotype, for example.
Right.
So, and then it depends on the kind of secondary evidence. So when you're talking about like if I was to write a book about something and I'm giving my analysis of the evidence, my analysis is secondary. It's you judge it by what I present as primary evidence. And
Right.
and then I can give my opinion on the primary evidence and to show how this and this fits together to create this narrative. And um so that's pretty much how you look at it.
I have another question for you.
All righty.
Okay. You hear a lot of people say academia says this. So we should go with what academia says. And let me give an example so you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay. We're both African American. We know how academia teaches the history of the slave trade, right? They say that the first thing they say is, Africans sold other Africans into slavery and they just keep going. And that's a narrative that is like, constantly being pushed on us, right?
Hmm.
So when, or what, okay, let me be more concise. Let me take that back. Okay. Academia seems to act like that Afrocentrism and people like John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben Yakinen, may they both rest in peace, that they somehow do not exist or like, anything of that nature. So do we take what academia says kind of serious if they can kind of move the goalpost like that?
Well, we have to be careful in our wording because remember that Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben were academia. They were academics. They taught in academia.
Right,
So when you
but
say academia, that
okay.
includes Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and Dr. John G. Jackson and Dr. Theophilo Benga and Dr. Shekhan Diop and Dr. Uba Bakri Musalam and Dr. Oscar Perfuma and Dr. Om and DG, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So, when people say academia and they're trying to dismiss the African scholars, what they're saying is white scholars, but they just don't want to outright say it. Because
Okay.
remember, all of these individuals are people who hold academic positions. They have academic degrees and taught in the academy. So they are
Mhm.
academia.
Mm.
So when someone tries to say that, you make them say names. Who is these academicians? What are their qualifications? Based on what evidence? You make people
Mhm.
get real specific because then you'll come to find out that a lot of these people who make these arguments haven't read anything. So
Right.
they're hearing rumors, and they'll say academia. When did they get together? How many people? How many academicians in total were there that voted? On a particular issue, and what percentage voted this way and what percentage voted that way. What do you mean?
Hmm.
Like, people just say stuff and don't understand what it means, what they're saying. And so, you have to be able to call them out on their BS like this, and
Okay.
make sure that they're using scientific and precise language, because that kind of argument may work for laypersons who don't understand anything, but for
Hmm.
a scholar, will be able to see through that easily.
Right.
And so that's what you got to kind of make note of, and understand the nature of language, and to see what, who you name names. Part of any academic endeavor is your literature review.
Right.
What texts have you read, and what was the evidence that they used to come to their conclusions? What's the citation? What
And I
methods
just
did
got
they
them.
use?
Hmm.
You just don't accept anything because somebody made an argument. Like, everybody has an opinion. Who gives a rat's ass? What does the evidence say?
Right.
What constitutes evidence in this particular field of endeavor?
Right.
And are you even competent enough to understand the methodology and the evidence? That's another thing that we always have to question as well. Just because you're making an argument doesn't mean that you are competent enough to evaluate an analysis. Like, people throwing around genetics and stuff, people don't know nothing about biology, don't know how to do statistical analysis, couldn't tell me what ATP is, nothing. But they want to make genetic arguments for the haplogroup this, and this means that the phenotype, haplogroups don't even detect phenotypes. So how would you know what phenotype they are if they have E1, B1B, or J2, or H this? Like, you got to call people out on it, on the specifics. You don't accept nothing. you know
Mm.
this is why I try to be very precise in my wording, and in what I present as evidence.
Yeah, that tends to make sense because like I've always like reasons why I like always kind of gravitated towards you in terms of like YouTube channels is
Hmm.
because you honestly sound like one of my professors. Like when you would break down stuff on videos, like I'm like this man, he literally sounds like one of my professors in college. So I can I can tell that
Yeah, like I understand that people, we all come to this social media space in varying different degrees, and for various reasons. But I didn't come into the quote unquote conscious community, you know, uh, with no knowledge of self, and watching videos. Like, I went to school for this. So there was an academic standard that I had to adhere to. Taking the course material, there's a lot of stuff that I had to read. There's a lot of debates and argumentation that I would have with academia. I present at conferences, like the
One Africa.
the One Africa conference that is coming up. And when you in the company of like a Dr. Malana Karenga, Theophilo Benga, a Professor James Smalls, and a Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and a Malefe Keti Asante, I can't come to them with no BS. And I was taught by people who graduated in the program under Asante.
Hmm.
And so I got Africology as a disciplinary thing. And so my professors, like Professor uh, James Conyers, who passed in 2021,
I got his book.
he has a number of books. He has like over 50.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
got the John Herbert Clark one.
Yes, that's one of his books. Matter of fact, I was there in his office when he was working on it.
Mm.
And in his last book that he released, I think before he passed, was actually in 2019, and it's on research methods in Africology. And
Mm.
so that's something that he would stress and he would be a stickler on, is research methods. Like, he's the one that I would tell you that when I would turn in stuff, and I gave him my first book, the first thing he does is goes to the source material and to see if your sources are right. Because if your sources ain't right, the work you have inside the text ain't right.
Mm.
He can already tell the from just looking at your source material, your citations, the quality of the information in your text without even reading it. And so that's the school that I come from. And so when I come into this space, I try to bring that to the layperson so that we can catch up, because a lot of us are coming out in the public and making arguments. And what is happening is that you have certain racist folks who are trying to devalue African scholars, but they're mainly using arguments that lay people make on social media and things of this nature, and say, see, that's the nature and the quality of the work of Afrocentric scholars, quote
Right.
people like Young Pharaoh and Cyrus Seti,
And other people.
you know.
Because, that whole thing of you talking about how, like, you come out of a different like train of thought than the layperson.
Hmm.
Like, I've always noticed that it's like you're able to kind of intellectually eviscerate these people without even trying. Because it's like, there's certain pitfalls that, that the self-taught scholar wouldn't even know, to come at you with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, everyone is self-taught. See, this is what people don't understand. When you go to school, when you get your bachelor's, you're just learning the basics of a particular field. When you get your master's and your PhD, what you're demonstrating to the academic world is that, one, you know how to do research, and two, you know how to be a producer of knowledge. And actually, I can add a third, that you are an authority on something. So when you get your degree, when you get your PhD, you become an authority on the subject for which you defended your dissertation.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean you know everything. You are an expert in that. You become an authority. You have produced new knowledge on a particular subject in a very narrow field. But because you've demonstrated that you know how to research and you know how to produce knowledge, now you become self-taught in other areas to expand in the work that you're doing, because you know how to do the research. And that's something that is missing. That's why I like that question that was given earlier in terms of what books do I have and things for research methods in the different fields. So I'm gonna share those, and I'll probably share some of the text if I have any PDF versions of those texts. And I brought Brandon in, but he kind of fell out. So um, what I'm
I
going to do is I'm
haven't.
going to go back to the chat real quick, and then I'm going to come back
Okay.
to this conversation. So I know I'm probably very far behind. And Pure Blacks, the questions. Asar, serious question for you. How do you feel about the Ti doing stand-up comedy? Um, I don't really have an opinion. I don't necessarily see him as a I think like he's a funny homeboy, if that makes sense. But I don't see him as a stand-up comic. But with that being said, um, I give everyone a chance. So I would have to hear his actual stand-up to see if he's good or not. Because you never want to judge a book by its cover. He may, have potential, and or he may be good, and he just needs to work and perfect his craft. I don't know. I've never heard him do. I've just heard that I've never heard him do stand up, but I've heard that he has uh endeavored to enter that craft, into that field. And as someone who has, hosted a number of shows throughout the years, a lot of people don't know that I used to host a lot of like pageant events, and I host a lot of poetry events and parties and the like. And and so hosting and getting in front of people and entertaining, that is a very unique skill, and not everyone can do that. And so, now he, of course, he has a little bit of an advantage because he's used to performing on stage and putting on a show in terms of hip hop. But as a hip hop artist, you have music and lights and all of this is the kind of stuff to help you along, not only with the lyrics, but when you're doing comedy, it's just you and your voice. And so that's a totally different beast. So I really don't have an opinion. So hopefully I can catch one of his shows, or somebody can share a link where he is, that, like, if there's a YouTube channel that has one of his videos that I can review. But as of right now, I haven't seen any of his stand up to form an opinion. And uh, let me see. Emmanuel, that answer the question. If you don't have a response, I'll for sure. All right. He says, any update on Dr. Keita's books? Not yet. And a matter of fact, I just sent him a correspondence this weekend, so I'm hoping to hear back from him soon. If not, I'll just give him a call, and I'll update y'all on that. Let's see. Uh,
That's
short.
all right.
Hold on one sec. Um, they're having a whole discussion on critical race theory. Let's see, Sean Smith, just Google it. Let's go ahead and also look up Derek Bell, who presented the theory. I'm gonna get someone on the show who can talk about critical race theory, because even though I have some familiarity, I can't say that I got any in-depth study on it to be arguing for or against its merits. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll down and see what I'm missing. What's up, Asar? He says, Craig Hero says, what's up, Asar? What methodology did you use to prove the Sumerians were black? I never argued that the Sumerians were black. I argued that the Sumerian language is an African language akin to Bantu. And that more than likely what happened is that you had a group of Africans to leave, either crossing over the Red Sea, or going through Egypt, who settled into what is now called southern Iraq. And because they were a little bit more culturally advanced than their neighbors, the because remember, Sumeria is really kind of just a group of city states. It's not like a single territory, but that they adopted the African languages, and then over time, they just kind of blended in and merged with the groups that were around there. But it's clear that the Sumerian language is an African language related to uh, Proto-Bantu. And so the methodology used to make that argument is a standard historical comparative method. So, but I don't argue that they were black in the sense that their origins were of African folks, and their culture survived in the language. And but it's clear that over time they were absorbed by the larger groupings that were around there. So that's my argument. Let me see, Sean, what you asked a question about the origin.
Sorry.
Hold on one second. Let's see. So the human centered approach. I don't know what y'all talking about there. Yeah, they having their own debate and discussion here. Uh, get past all the CRT. What do you think about? Okay. What do you think about the Americas' current political sphere and situation being compared to the long period of the fall of Rome? Um, I don't know. Like who's making that comparison, and what are the common points that they are arguing? And but in terms of the fall of Rome, I can see it. You know, but you remember that all empires and societies fall. So that's just a law of nature. And America, all the signs are there that America is on this decline.
Yep.
Um, Hold on. He said, could the danger in pushing humanism agenda be that it might have a colorblind effect, or could be used by others to dismiss our fight against oppression? Um, I don't think so, because again, if you're coming from the standpoint of indigenous African knowledge, this what we're calling humanism is just Ubuntu in Southern Africa, and that is already ingrained in African culture and philosophy. So being humanist is being Afrocentric, and so because the whole concept of biological races in terms of human beings is pseudoscience in the first bit. So you can't acknowledge on one end that it's pseudoscience, but then try to keep it up and say it's true in another area, even if people are using the mythology, to make political moves. Once you start asking critical questions of it, you're going to find yourself trying to defend the indefensible, and once cognitive dissonance is going to emerge. That's why I want to wait in terms of to see what the exact arguments are from Afrocentricity International regarding that question. And so let me see. Yes, make sure that you big up and like the video. I'm just trying to go down and try to knock down some of these questions. And before I go back to the panel, and he says, on the surface, CRT is more of an African American thing than an African thing. On a deeper level, I do see parallels with critical theories of African philosophies. It's not an issue. It's about American law as it regards laws that were based on the pseudoscience of race. So of course, it's going to be an American thing. That's what you got to understand first and foremost. It's about law, United States law, and so it would be grounded in African philosophy, is that some aspects of that may come in as far as being able to critique the the underlying logic that compelled the laws to come into existence. But it is definitely going to be an American thing because we're talking about American laws. Let me see. And they're going on. Alana Dang, critical race theory. I'm probably just gonna have to just scroll. Talking about socialism, trying to find people in this chat believes RNC, which is I don't know. And they have in there. So let me go here. So, do you agree with the photos of the Hyksos kings on Real History? Da da da. Here, da da. Instagram used the photo in this YouTube video with Myth Vision. I'm not sure. I would. Someone would have to show me the photo. Um, so if you are friends with me on Facebook, or if you have, or you could just visit my Facebook, the public page, the asarimhotep page. Send me the link and to the specific photo that you're talking about, and we can discuss it. He says, "What does Christopher Eyre think about Negro Egyptian classification?" Don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm pretty sure that he would be opposed to it because he holds up the Greenberg language classifications, and so everywhere that Christopher Eyre and others of his like have tried to publicly defend Afro-Asiatic and Niger-Congo, they have been unable to do so because they don't follow the standard procedure in research methodology in terms of the historical comparative linguistics. And so he tries not to have too many public discussions about it because then he has to defend Afro-Asiatic. And from my knowledge of all the conferences where the opposition has been present, he hasn't favored too well. So I don't think that I'm not even sure to. Well, I'm pretty sure that he would know of Negro Egyptian from the standpoint of Theophilo Benga, because Theophilo Benga, by the time, see, people don't know that there was another major conference in Barcelona in 1996. And in 1995 is when Christopher Eyre published his book claiming to reconstruct Afro-Asiatic. But it was in 1993 that Theophilo Benga published his text where he brought forth, his argument for Negro Egyptian. And so Theophilo Benga was at that 1996 Barcelona conference for which Christopher Eyre was there, and they had exchange words, not in a fighting kind of way, but they had a debate there, and there's been a few subsequent other ones. So I'm pretty sure that he's familiar with Theophilo Benga's work. I'm not sure if he's familiar with Mboli's work, however, in his classification. He
I'm
uses.
actually the person that asked that question.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm actually the person that asked that question right there.
Oh, okay, yes. So yes, well, we'll welcome. What's the name that you have on screen? Jay Jima.
Jay Jimma.
To the panel, aka DBZ Feats.
Yeah.
In the chat. So, but yes. So, in terms of Mboli, he uses the same label as Dr. Theophilo Benga. However, his classification structure is totally different than Theophilo Benga, because Theophilo Benga just gets rid of Afro-Asiatic as a label. He takes all of the languages that belong to Afro-Asiatic with the exception of Semitic, and he lumps all of them into Negro Egyptian. He keeps Niger-Congo, he keeps Nilo-Saharan, he separates Khoisan, and he makes Berber. So for him, there's only 3 African language families on the continent: Negro Egyptian, Berber, and Khoisan. But he does not consider Semitic as part of the African group of languages. So his is totally different than Mboli's, in terms of his classification. but he does. Mboli uses the same label as Obenga, but I'm not sure if Christopher Aaron knows about Mboli, even though Mboli criticizes Christopher Aaron and Roger Blinch and the that whole school of thought.
And excuse me, I would be able to find those texts, find this literature online somehow.
In terms of
Specifically, um, somebody talking about Mboli's critique on Christopher Eric.
you will find, you'll be able to purchase his book, but
Okay.
it's in French.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure if you read French, but if you do, yeah, you can purchase his text. It was published in 2010, and I'm not sure how soon, but I know he's working on a second book, which continues from the 2010 text that was published, The Origin of African Languages. And but this time he expands what he started in that text, looking at Semitic and Indo-European. And so now the text that is coming out will be solely focused on Semitic and Indo-European and their possible relationship to African languages.
Okay.
But that should come out within a year or so. So I know he's on the last leg of that conversation.
I just got one more follow-up question.
No problem.
How would the modern academia reconcile all of this stuff? Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, how would they, or what would be a modern source to to give somebody? Because people, the modern person doesn't understand how academics works. They don't, you know what I mean? But so they would want a credible source for this to come to. Does anybody summarize this? What's going on?
In English, no, and that would be a good. And I'm assuming that you're speaking about the language classification specifically.
Yeah.
So I don't know of just a separate text that kind of goes through the history of it all, and to argue the merits of the classification schemes, because you got to understand in academia, there's cliques, just like in the streets and just like in these social media streets, but essentially we call them schools of thought.
I understand.
And so you have certain schools of thought who have a certain framework for which they operate under, and it may be in opposition totally or partly with another school of thought. And so they may never reconcile.
Wow. Yeah.
But they're all professionals in academics in that singular space. So it's and at the end of the day, it's always going to be about the nature of the primary evidence and who has put in the work in terms of the comparative method to demonstrate the relationship between these two or more languages. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Greenberg School, they have not done that. And that's been the critique. And so they've been critiqued by African scholars, by European scholars, by Australian scholars.
I think it'll catch up. Don't you think?
But it has to be made known. So I've like in my 2020 Aluja Volume 2 text, I brought about a collection of some of these critiques. It's not a full analysis of the history of the full arguments and things. That would be a good book that is a book that has yet to be written.
Okay.
And is one that is much needed. But the closest would be Mboli's work himself, because at the beginning of his text, and his book is about 600 pages, at the beginning of his text is analyzing, the Greenbergian arguments,
Mm-hmm.
and why they fall short and the
Mm-hmm.
like. And so you kind of get a history there, but nothing that's really just in depth to my knowledge.
All right, I'm gonna hop off. In my opinion, I think your work, as you continue to achieve in your personal, whatever you got going on, and Bowley's work and Obinga, I think all of these things will, you know, so I think 10 years from now, Harvard
Hmm.
is finally going to come out with the public lecture, just like they hosted Chris Ehret, and then
Hmm.
they'll talk about this stuff. I think it'll just take some more time.
Yeah,
Uh,
and we see that now. For example, um, Theo Falabenga has been making the argument forever
mm-hmm,
that the Semitic languages cannot be shown to be related to ancient Egyptian.
mm-hmm,
But you have all this literature from these academics making these claims that Semitic and Egyptian are closely related,
mm-hmm,
and that the Egyptian emerges out of Semitic. However, they 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 have not been able to prove this,
mm-hmm,
but they've been publishing for years, for decades, making these claims. And relatively recently, there was a series of conferences. It was two conferences, one that was held in Texas and one that was held in Connecticut, and talking about the relationship or the non-relationship between Semitic and Egyptian. That when they applied the comparative method to the Semitic and Egyptian languages, they were unable to establish a relationship
wow,
based upon the criteria of regular sound meaning correspondences.
mm-hmm,
Now, what I find interesting is that you have two conferences at least on this, and there's a book that's going to be published at the end of the year, summarizing the arguments from these conferences. Theophilo Binga and no African scholar was invited, and they're the ones who've been making this claim for the longest. See, what's going to happen is they're going to act like they came to these conclusions that these African scholars made independently without any kind of influence from the African scholars, and not give the African scholars credit. And so, when you have a conference like this, you invite Theophilo Benga because he's been telling you that, and y'all been trying to argue and try to make it seem like it was like he was some fringe, linguist. But now you're making the same arguments that he is for the same reasons that he is. But you're not giving him and these other African scholars their due. So I agree, you'll see it, but they'll still find a way to whitewash it.
oh yeah. All right, brother, take it easy, bro. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for joining. You say, say, let me see. Still looking for. We really can't put on. I'm still scrolling. Says, sorry, don't underestimate Sarah. Student said he's sure some of the stuff he says straight lies. However, there's a method to his madness, and I found some of his rhetoric useful throughout the years. Indeed, he's not going to be totally wrong on anything. It's just a consistency. Nobody's 100% right all the time. But what you're always going to look for is the integrity of the argument and the consistency of being on the right side of history, and that's what you look for. And so we may not get it right all the time, but if we have a consistent habit of of bringing integral work to the public, that's essentially what we need, and to be rigorous in our analysis. He said Tip got booed yesterday. Yep, I heard that. He said get booed a few more times. But ego indeed. Google Maps sign is the United States, Canada, Tiffany as well. Okay, y'all having a whole different discussion here. And there you can understand Sumerian had Bantu connections. Wow, pseudo. He says pseudo over here. I don't know what heat is, but I'm assuming you meant over here. Yeah, that's why over here is demonstration beats conversation. I can have a debate with anybody on this subject, and they will not come out victorious. So bring me your best scholars. I'll be waiting. Tiffany said if you can find a clip of him calling her, and she'll give her $1 million. So Blackity Black over here. It says, oh my, hilarious. One Sumerian language translated why they put hyphens between the symbols. He says, when Sumerian language is translated, why they put hyphens between symbols. I'm assuming that is just to separate words, because just like the Egyptian language, they did not space out their words. Everything is kind of clumped together. Same thing with Semitic. And so back in the day, just didn't believe in spaces. So that's, I'm assuming, what you're referencing. Let's see, link this pen. It was within her hand. Pick it up here. Okay. Let me see. That's funny. Let me go here. It says, okay, Lothario Cartwright asks, Greens Brother Star, do you see any merit in organizations like the Asarimhotep Society at Kemetic University led by Mulata Ashby? Additionally, do you think there is a benefit in Freemasonry? Okay, so to your first question, yes, I do see benefits in organizations such as those. First and foremost, they are African centered, they are African grounded, they are based on African ethics, and they are an attempt and the creation to try to create community. So that's ultimately what that is. You got to look at it from the standpoint that people crave community, and we want to be in community with like minds that appreciate and love and have the same interest, but more importantly, that are bound by the same ethics. And so with communities like Asarimhotep Society, or the Kemetic University created by Mulata Ashby, they're creating communities, and they're saying that we are adopting ancient Egyptian culture, language, and ethics to ground our lives and to build community with. And so there's nothing I find wrong with that. It's no different than when people in the United States go over to Nigeria, get initiated into Ifa and create Ilays here, and then they build a community that centered around people who want to ground themselves in the Yoruba culture, language, and ethical system, and community. And so what I've always advocated, however, is the creation of our own culture so that we can have a set of ethics, values, motifs, and things to ground ourselves and build our own community that still has its foot in the African systems. And so He says, additionally, do you think there is a benefit in Freemasonry? Yes, because it is an organization that uses symbols to ground and its members into uh, a, an ethical system, and that drives, for example, their focus and desires in terms of being better human beings. Now, also, it teaches you organization, it teaches you networking. And I believe that, all African American males in this current stage of our development needs to join a Masonic organization. Not not for the right to say that we Freemasons and we got some secret knowledge. That's a bunch of BS. That's not what you join for. You're coming in and you're spying. You're learning how to organize and how to keep secrets. Because when you're trying to develop your nation, you're going to need to create such organizations. Because that's that's one of the ways in which militaries set themselves up. That's why we have passwords and secret handshakes. It's not because it's connected to the cosmos. It's because we just need to be able to authenticate one another so that we're not sharing information, with outsiders, who would not appreciate or who would try to use this information to cause us harm. And so you learn that in organizations such like that, and do the same thing by joining these initiatic systems in Africa, because they operate in the same way. Now you modernize it, and you create one for African Americans. And so, but at this stage of our development, I think this is something that we can benefit from, and and you kind of use it to organize and build your nation with. So I hope that helps. Let me see. What black politician represents African American interests in harassment? I don't know. I don't pay attention to politicians. I don't know too many, and even if they do, it's very limited in scope, because I don't know too many African-centered politicians. And so I already know the depth and the scope that they'll probably be willing to go in that position. So, but I can't answer that question honestly. Let's see. He said, Asar will say ancient Germanic tribes have an Igbo connection. No, I won't, and I haven't. And I'm able to make the Sumerian because that's what the evidence says. Um, and so until I compare Igbo language with Germanic languages or German, and if it meets the satisfaction that is required by the comparative method, I won't be making those arguments. So understand this about me. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. So you don't ever have to guess at what you think I'm going to say. And so I would not say that the ancient Germanic tribes have an Igbo connection, other than being human, and all Homo sapiens sapiens come out of Africa. Now, if I make that claim, you best believe that I have the evidence to prove it. Let me see. Sorry, isn't saying wasn't demonstrating anything linguistic, haven't demonstrated for more than 100 years. The relationship between Bantu Sumerian is old news. Yeah, this has been discussed for 100 years. The relationship between Bantu and Sumerian by a number of scholars. See, IBM, what if you have information? Natural Congo, little sharing Congos with pro-Indo-European. Yeah. We try to this is what African and black decision represents the interests of African and black people in the capitalist America. Who knows? Peace and blessings. Thank you for joining. And let me see. Remember that you can hop on or you can ask a question, and I'm getting towards the bottom. This question: what was the first language no one will know ever? That's we have evidence of human speech, or the ability to have human speech and language going back at least 150, 175,000 years. And so, matter of fact, actually, even probably at the Homo erectus stage, you'll never know what the first language was. That is too far back. Says Ruan Fall says, I don't know if that's our brother Aziz. He says, I know some people have Emboli's work in Senegal now. That's what's up. He says, you read the Golden Age of the Black Nationalism, 1815, 1923, when Moses rules in the intellectual Harold Cruz. That's a question for Didon. Let me see. People talking about the African. Let me see. Sorry, can you break down how our ancestors counted to 10, how they progressed from 0 to 10 in sacred science terms? You remember, Africa is a very big place, and there's thousands of different ethnic groups. But the simplest answer, and I don't know if this is necessarily sacred science, but which you'll find in most languages around the world, is that the first 10 and even 20 numbers are really just, you're counting your fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then they count the toes. And that's it. It's nothing really deep about the first numbers. And I'm not sure that many people or many groups considered 0 a number. I know that, mathematically speaking, it was the Babylonians who gave us the 0 number as a real number, so to speak, in mathematics. Not saying that they didn't. Other people didn't have the concept of empty, of nothing, in just terms of number, as like in a number scale, like there's a 0, then -1, -2, and stuff like that. He says academic is like kung fu movies, basically. Says Rawan Fall says most don't care enough to connect the dots from our perspective. It's really up to us, indeed. Let's see. Do you know the Dogon tribe had their own calendar and way of tracing time? I believe so. It's been a while since I read up on Dogon stuff, but I mean, most groups of people had their own calendar system and way to keep track of time. So that's not a superhuman feat. Let me see. He says, "What's the update on Egyptian being a Bantu language?" I don't know what you mean in terms of an update. It's just Egyptian is a Bantu language. That's the update. Are Berber languages related to Semitic ones? I don't know. They have yet to do the comparative method to make that argument. And so this is what y'all got to understand. To establish a relationship between languages, you have to do the historical comparative method. This is the scientific way of eliminating chance from one's analysis. And this has not been done for Semitic. It's not been done, it has not been done for Semitic against Berber, for example, or Semitic and Egyptian, or Semitic and Omatic, or Semitic and Chadic, so-called Chadic languages. And I'm not even sure Chadic languages have even had that, done. It definitely hasn't been done for so-called Niger Congo. Like a lot of these language groups are not authentic, verified, scientifically valid groups. And so, it's kind of hard to make certain arguments because of that lack of background, that lack of history. And and so, in terms of, you know, Berber and Semitic, we have to be able, you're going to find some similarities, but because they're in close proximity, is always a possibility that these could be loan words or just aerial loans in for a group, because they've been interacting for thousands of years. And that's what the comparative method will help you to distinguish. And so let me see. If you guys type question or answer, you might have a better luck in getting an answer to your questions. Indeed, I'm just trying to scroll. So, you got to understand from my standpoint, I'm still behind. So if you're just typing in stuff, I'll just get to it as I'm scrolling down. Peace and blessings. Hey, SR, what's the true origins of the Adam and Eve story? And are there any good books that goes into the subject matter? I don't know if there's necessarily an origin outside of the Hebrews themselves for Adam and Eve. You may be able to look into Mesopotamia somewhere for some commonalities, but I know that a good take on their story, if you can get the sons of the gods and the daughters of men by Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. Now, I've had him. I've done an interview with the elder on this program. Let me type in his name so that y'all, if you're not familiar with him, you know exactly. Modupe Oduyoye. So uh, something like the sons of the gods and the daughters of men, right? I think it's like 1992 it was published, somewhere along those lines. So this is the name of the author, Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. And he's a theologian, a Christian theologian, and a linguist out of Nigeria. And I think he has a very good perspective on the Adam and Eve story, based on the language and linguistics of Hebrew in comparison to Egyptian and Yoruba languages. And so, that'll be a good text for you to give you a different perspective. And so if I remember correctly, one of the things that he essentially argues fundamentally is that, these are deities that were demytholized, in the text, as to try to seem to be monotheistic. And so it's just a good text overall. So that's just a good book to get. So again, it is, let me go back. Dr. Modupe Oduyoye, The Sons of the Gods and the Daughters of Men, I believe is the title of the text. So look at the corporate, Brother Sar. He says, Jehuti Ma'at asks, it says, Brother Sar, peace, Brother Sar, when we gonna get that beginner's comparative linguistics book? There's plenty of beginners comparative linguistics books already out there. Unfortunately, there's not too many, if any, for African languages. That is a comparative historical linguistics book. I don't have the time to write it at the moment. So, if y'all waiting on me, it's going to be a couple of years. Since Asar Economics builds institutions that employ African-centered scholars that educate the grassroots to produce the people that represent us politically and morally. Keep up the good work. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining. Sister there's a group of us who are working on Afro cosmetology. Indeed. We need African Center, barbering, and beauty education. We are having some great dialogue on this topic. Keep your fingers crossed. We'll do. Keep us updated, Sister Ladocia. Uh, and if you want to discuss it here, please let me know. I will have you on as a guest to let us know on the progress of that. Scrolling down, and peace and blessings. Thank you to Bastet for your generous contribution. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Um, he says, "What's the latest on deciphering the Maronic script?" Um, to my knowledge, it still hasn't been fully deciphered yet. You know, I made my contribution on terms of sound correspondences with the college and language, and I intend to start presenting on that in the near future at some conferences. But as of right now, to my knowledge, it has not been fully deciphered yet. And so some progress has been made. Matter of fact, Dr. Ridley just had, and I found out too late, but he just had a lecture that was online live via Zoom. But you know, he's based out in Europe, so it was during Europe's time, and and so I missed it. So I'm in. To my knowledge, it hasn't been recorded and posted on YouTube. So I don't know what was, but Dr. Ridley is one who has been working on Merodic for a number of decades now. But as of now, to my knowledge, it hasn't been deciphered. No, with James Piano said in his book, Middle Egyptian, third edition, the Egyptian language is Afro-Asiatic, but is closer to the African side. Do you agree with this? And do you agree with his work? Um, well, I don't agree with Afro-Asiatic as a whole, regardless. But when he says, but it's closer to the African side, you know, I believe he was talking about like the so-called Chadic languages like Hausa, etc. And you know, he would be correct on that. But you know, I call it China Intu, and Mboli and Dr. Obinga calls it Negro Egyptian. But you know, that's the African side, if that makes sense. In other words, it's not close to Berber or Semitic. That's what he's trying to say. Uh, he says the Ashango bone has 0 on it, but it's just a negative space. I haven't dealt with the Ashango bone in a minute, and I need to. I know I'm be coming back to it because I'm writing a text on African quantum field theory, and so I'll be talking about the mathematics and stuff. So I'll be revisit that. I wrote an article on the Ashango bone a long time ago. It was for the public. It was for a newspaper. You may find it online. And I believe the article was titled something like, you know, African history is world history. So we'll see, you know, about that. Let me see here. Got about 15 minutes. I want to keep it under 2 hours. So thanks to Sister Tamika again for reminding us to like the video and peace and blessings. Sister Lamb is in the building. Let me see. And we have Magi asked a question. She says, disclaimer, big pseudo question ahead. Last year, I argued with a dude who told me that ancient Egyptians used mirrors and sunlight to melt stones. I thought he was crazy. What's your opinion? I've actually never heard that before, so I don't have an opinion. I want to know what his evidence is. You know, he may be right, but until I know who made the argument and what's their evidence for that, you know, I'm not sure. You know, keep in mind that Egypt is in the desert, so it gets plenty of sunlight. So all the sunlight would have melted the rocks, But if he's talking about there's a more concentrated form in the form of a laser beam as a result of reflecting off of the mirror and it cut through, if that's his argument, I don't know. Maybe so, but I'm not sure. I've never heard that argument before. Let's see. Peace and blessings to Sister Carol Asberon, if I'm saying that correctly. She asks, have you ever interviewed Nana Darkwa, who wrote the Africans who wrote the Bible? I have not, and I've actually tried to find him. I know someone who's in Ghana now, but they haven't gotten back to me on connecting with him. So he's a person of interest. It's just a matter of finding him. So he's been off the radar for a while, and so you just got to find like an uncle of his or something like that to get the word to him to make it happen. So it's the same thing that I had to do with Dr. Modupe Oduyoye. Like I had to find a roundabout way because Dr. Modupe Oduyoye is 83 years of age, or excuse me, 86, I think. And so, he's not on social media. He doesn't even have a cell phone. And so, trying to find him and get it organized so that we get him in front of a computer and conduct the interview, it was a process. So I'm assuming it's going to be the same thing for Dr. Darkwa. He's getting up there in age as well. And so he says, we need an Emboli book club. Sheesh, indeed. So let me see. I see we got Brother Lionel back and Sunchild. And so I'm going to bring you on in just a sec. So I finally got to the bottom. All right. So are all languages descendants from a common ancestor, or is it possible that they could emerge without ascendancy? That's always a possibility that, if all human beings derive from the same common group, then logic would follow that all the languages that came about beforehand, after that, derive from that language. But it's also possible that certain Homo sapien groups had the ability to speak in language, but they didn't form languages until they were separated and they created it independently and probably came back and merged in a whole bunch of things. And that's kind of partly what Mboli argues in his 2010 text, Origin of African Languages. He puts that possibility out there. And so, but that's a hard thing to say, because again, the ability for human language emerged hundreds of thousands of years ago, and there's just no way for us to trace and document and just know how any of that happened. And so all we can do is guess at this point. So let's see, how do you feel about Neanderthal language sound like? It says, what did the Neanderthal language sound like? I have no idea. They left us no writing, so we have no idea of what it sounded like. And he says, how do you feel about Kaba Kabini? I think he's a good elder. He's a generalist, and he's a curriculum person. He puts together curriculums for teaching. I don't necessarily consider him like a research scholar in the sense that he's producing new knowledge in terms of African historiography, but he's a teacher. That's what he does. He's more so of a teacher and a curriculum builder. And he said that on very many occasions. And I'll do this last question. Are the San people in Southern Africa the oldest people on the earth, on this earth? I believe that they are of an older stock. You know, I wouldn't say the oldest people because that's assuming that everybody else that is a Homo sapien right now is at the same age. We're all technically of the oldest people. But in terms of their type, I think they are of an older type. Uh, and when you talk about them, or the so-called like Batois, those are the almost the original type. And then just in certain areas they've evolved to look different, but everyone's the same age. So I'm going to bring Sunchild on. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the program. What's on your mind? And do you have any questions?
Pete, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Cool. This is my first time, brother. I've been checking you out and the brothers on Sonnetter and so on, just trying to build some knowledge,
Appreciate it.
Um, yes, sir. I noticed on your profile, you and brother Jabari are both members of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Hmm.
I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma. I was wondering if you can help me out. How do you how do you how do you what's the word I'm looking for? As far as being Greek, when I first joined the fraternity back in the day, the Afrocentric brothers were kind of, as far as complementing a Greek identity with an Afrocentric one. How do you complement the two? If you understand the question.
I believe I do, and it's ironic that you have this question because I recently had a show on that, like a whole 1.5 to 2 hour show
Can you tell me the title?
on
I'll
that
look it up
subject.
and check it out.
I'm sorry.
Can you tell me the title of that show that you did so I can check it out?
Let me, and it should be like one of the top videos because it was fairly recent.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll look for it. But if you don't give me a short, if you don't mind giving me a short synopsis, I'd appreciate it. Now.
Here it goes. Do Black Greeks have an identity crisis? That's the title of the show.
Okay,
And
awesome.
and and I know this question comes up a lot because one of the things I have to remind folks is that when members of the BGLOs, as we call them, say that they are Greek, they only mean it in the context of this is the letters of the acronyms for the organizations we belong to. But no one, to my knowledge, has ever identified or sought to be identified with Greek speaking people, right? Like we have our own thing. The only thing Greek about us are the letters that we use. Now, when for example, like with Alpha Phi Alpha, like our symbols are the pyramids and the Sphinx, and we're the first brotherhood of the Ethiopians. It's like this, we're identifying with Africa, not only in motifs, but in terms of the name and the acronym itself. But we also have like on our shield a knight. That's not African. That's European warrior, um, regalia and the like. So there are some elements, but it's to be expected, existing in a space like this, and I have to remind people that like even when you're wearing African, so-called African garments, they're really Indian, that was imported into Africa, that was adopted by Africans, and that they just made into their own thing. And there's when cultures interact, there's always exchange, and so I don't see necessarily a problem with it. Now, there's all types of people in these organizations. You're going to find a lot of Christians, you're going to find some Muslims, you're going to find African centered folks, you're going to find folks who don't have a desire for Africa. You're going to find Buddhist folks. Usually besides the grades, the only really requirement besides your character is that you have a belief in a God. It doesn't tell you what God. It just says a God or the concept of God. To my knowledge, no one it accepts uh, openly people who are atheists. You know, but outside of that, it's not designed and built for what a lot of us in the African centered community would think that it would be. These organizations were created to be self-help organizations to keep Black men and women in school and to graduate. And then they expanded once they start having graduate chapters so that you have, business networks, around the world and the like. And so it's kind of evolved over the years. But, it's these organizations started in the early 1900s. There's no Afrocentricity at this time, you know, and so they're not going to have an Afrocentric in the strictest sense worldview and framework. And so we got to remember that when we're looking at these particular organizations. But and in that lecture, I primarily spoke of Alpha, and I opened it for if other members wanted to talk about their organization. So I don't want to claim to know, the ins and out of everyone's organization. But, when you have these conversations with people who are part of these organizations, you you get a sense for the diversity, and you'll find there's many African centered and pro Black people who I know who are Omegas and Sigmas and Kappas, believe it or not. Matter of fact, the head of my when I first got to the University of Houston, Dr. Jelani Williams, Ma'akeru, he was our advisor, you know, and, this brother was very African centered and, was part of Dr. Ben's, craft and the whole nine. He's a Kappa. He was a Kappa. He had passed away, you know, and, you'll find these members in these groups that have these alliances. There's a lot of people who are African centered, who were part of these organizations, like Dr. Asa Hilliard in terms of Omega, Dr. Um, uh, Jacob Carruthers, who's an Alpha, of course, Dr. Greg Carr and Dr. Mario Beatty. And, we talk about Dr. Khalid Muhammad, who's a Q. It's these organizations have diverse individuals, and it's not these are not religious organizations. So you're not going to, even though they're dominated by Christians, but that's because most African Americans are Christians, being here. But it's a diverse group of individuals, and we got to look at them as that. But I have yet in the 20 years, I'll be coming up on the 17th of this month. I will have been in Alpha 20 years. In the 20 years that I've been in the organization, I have yet to find in any organization anybody who identifies with being Greek, like in terms of the people, the values, the customs, in terms of learning the language, and in terms of their dress. We don't walk around in togas and wear leaves on our heads and all this other kind of stuff. You just don't see that, and so, it's a very nuanced and very complex conversation. But I did have a recent conversation regarding that, on the channel under that title. Do Black Greeks have an identity crisis?
Awesome. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I see we got our brother Lionel back. I don't know if you. had technical difficulties.
I had to eat some spaghetti and fish and some pickles.
You
But
pregnant? How does fish and pickles, unless it's in a
you
po'
ain't
boy
never
sandwich?
you ain't never had no fish and pickles, man.
And that's beyond country. I don't know uh, where you
I,
from.
I'm I'm from Missouri, man.
Yeah, that's country.
Missouri ain't well. Missouri is country. When you take out St. Louis, it's nothing but animals. But so I want to ask you a question.
All right.
Since you said you know Dana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know Dana a little bit now too, because I kind of seeked her out through like Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do you feel about her information? Like, because like I can like I know she's an academic because I asked her about what is her degrees and everything like that. So like, how do you feel about her information?
Um, I'm well. It's always going to depend on what specific information, but in general,
Okay,
she's
just on the Moors, because that's what she likes to talk about. Like she's always talking about the Moors and her blog spot, which I have not checked out yet. She always told me she'd be like, "You need to look at my blog spot," So how do you?
yeah she
She's a bit of a character too. She's really quirky.
Yeah, she, I'm mainly known her for more so in the conversations of trying to make the arguments for Black Arabs,
Hmm.
and I know like Dr. Wesley Muhammad likes to use her a lot in terms of the Black Arabs, and so uh, I think that she would benefit if she was skilled in historical comparative linguistics.
Mm.
And because a lot of her stuff relies on kind of descriptions, kind of secondary resources and the like, and at least on that question, I'm not I'm familiar with her work on the Moors, but admittedly I just really don't care about the Moors in terms of scholarship and the like, so I don't read too in depth on it. I've read some stuff in the past that just didn't interest me because Moors are just Arabs. It's Arab culture, it's Arab language, it's Arabs. Regardless of what the color is, they're Arabs. And so it's nothing that distinct about the Moors, from Arabic culture and Islamic culture.
Right.
So um,
'Cause- mm,
so
I'm sorry.
it's just not that interesting to me. Um, but in terms of her Black Arab conversations, that's what I'm more familiar with. And I remember back in the day on some list that we used to be a part of, like Yahoo list. You know, is when I first met Dr. Clyde Winters. It's like in the early 2000s, like
Hmm.
2003, 2004. Um, and Professor Manu and Pim and a few others, we all belong to these Yahoo groups as a result of coming off the tail end of the Black Athena debates that they kind of hopped around. So we were still having those debates and arguments in these Yahoo list groups, and so she was part of that group. So I'm very familiar
Wow.
with her,
'Cause-
her work and the like. And
okay.
but in terms of the whole Black Arabs thing, because you can be labeled as an Arab and not speak Arabic, at least in the early days, because all an Arab was an Arab. The word Arab itself is just a syllabic inverse of the word Hebrew, and
I thought it meant nomad.
they both refer to people who don't settle, that just migrate and move. They're nomads. So when you understand this, anybody could be labeled an Arab in those days. It wasn't necessarily an ethnic group and tied to a language that you would know. People could
Mhm.
speak in Nilotic languages because there were a lot of those groups who were in Arabia. Some of them were Fulani who used to go back and forth, in those areas, and so it's just a lot that needs to be flushed out. But I haven't been keeping up with her, so I don't know what any of her latest stuff. If
Uh,
she got some new stuff in terms of her website.
she got some new stuff that she working on. She writes on academia.edu a lot,
Hmm.
and she also wrote a book called The African, and well, you saw the interview. It was the
Yeah.
African and Hebrew origins of the Bible, and but you're right on the Moors kind of being an extension of Arab culture, because when me and Robin and Dana was talking when the interview was over, because it's real interested about what happened afterwards. But she
Hmm.
told me and Robin that there was some letters that she had talked about how the Moors, they were writing letters about how they couldn't control themselves because the European women weren't circumcised.
The European women.
Yeah, the European women weren't circumcised. And so she told us about letters about how they would be saying stuff like, I can't control myself. Oh my God. Like, this is.
Yeah, that sounds like some Arab stuff. Uh, well, hold on, I want to get to this question here. Imat, if I'm saying that correctly, asks, given enough time and minimum borrowing, can a language lose all traces of genetic connection to its parent language? Um, I don't think so. However, you got to understand that the parent language or series of dialects. What tends to happen is that the that language is descendants, the speakers tend to spread out and move. And as groups and populations move and separate from each other, dialects begin to form. And sometimes those dialects, like for example, if you know we know that New York African Americans speak in a certain way, Cali folks speak in a certain way, definitely people out of New Orleans speak a certain way, and then you got your people in like South Carolina, Geechee, and like they all have their distinct nuances, but we understand each other. It's still close enough. But let's say we didn't have social media. There was no YouTube, there's no live streams, none of that. And, it's now 200, 300 years later. 9 times out of 10, these dialects of English or African American vernacular English would have become so distinct that if we were to meet each other, we couldn't understand each other, even though we're speaking the same language. And so, only through the historical comparative method process, when we're able to accurately apply certain symbols to sounds and then kind of lay them out and compare them in terms of their meaning, that we're able to make those connections that these are in fact the same language. Now, I would guess over thousands, like 20s of thousands of years, that more than likely, like these, it will be hard to make those connections to the parent language, because unless the parent language is recorded in full, the only thing that we can do is reconstruct the language. And we can only do that by comparing the daughter languages and then finding those commonalities And then based upon certain sound laws and rules that we discovered, we're able, and our understanding of sound mutations and shiftings and the like, and we eliminate borrowings, then we're able to construct certain aspects of the parent language. But we're never able to fully and accurately, construct a full proto language. You're only able to do so much of the language in terms of the reconstruction, and that's solely based on the quality of our understanding of the daughter languages, and if there's still enough survivals in those languages, enough to make comparisons that we can reconstruct the parent language. So it's almost like if when a plane crashes and you have the people who come in and look at all of the parts, and they try to recover as much of the parts as possible, they will reconstruct the plane. They know what a plane looks like or what it's supposed to look like, but they'll try to reconstruct it as much as possible to get some kind of idea of how what went wrong with the plane, and where was the explosion or the detachment of the plane, where did that first, and how did that affect understanding laws of physics. But when you do this, this is never the full plane. It's never like they just reconstructed brand new. You see the shape of the plane, but you'll see holes here, but they have patches of the what survives in terms of the wreckage of the plane. And in many respects, that is analogous to how linguists reconstruct the proto languages in absence of an actual recording of the proto language or any kind of written form of the language, for which we would need to reconstruct it in the first place. We would have the actual language recorded either verbally or audio or in written form, which we don't have. That's why we have historical comparative linguistics in the first place, because most of the world's languages were not recorded, and writing is a fairly recent technology in comparison to the long line of human evolution. So I hope that answers your question.
May I ask you another question, brother?
Go ahead.
Sometimes, just as a follow-up to the question on the BGLOs, as far as the process of becoming of membership, are you aware of any as far as the cultural heritage, an African cultural heritage that we can point to and say this is a has some type of African counterpart to what takes place as far as the culture of BGLOs?
Yeah, I mean, just the whole initiation aspect of it, in terms of like I went through that in the lecture, but the whole thing of the lines, the whole thing of shaving the head, as a result of the initiation process, right? Even to an extent, taking wood. Because even in the Egyptians, when they're going through their education, you see the teachers with sticks, because they would beat if you did not if you weren't able to recite and get the certain things right. In terms of like the whole, and I'm speaking because of course organizations don't Greek letter organizations don't haze anymore, but when they were hazing, you would isolate the group. Everyone had to wear the same thing. You had certain things in chants and things that you had to memorize. Of course, every group has their own sacred dances that are unique to their group, that you find the same thing in Africa. Like the whole thing is very African in terms of their correlations. And I even break down the fact that even if you feel a certain type of way of the Greek letters are still meta nature. They derive from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. So whether you use the Greek letters or use so-called Roman letters, they're all meta nature. They're all come from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic script. And there's been plenty of texts. We've talked about this on this channel. And so I'm trying to see, what else in terms of the organization, in terms of secret, handshakes and passwords. That's kind of unique about every group. Every group that has, a particular organization has a way of identifying its members that is not privy to everyone else.
Okay, can we say the same thing for, say, Freemasonry, Prince Hall, perhaps, that there is some type of African counterpart to that type of process as well?
Yes, I mean, but we got to remember that Freemasonry claims, its origin in form and the like of ancient Egypt. And that's not a secret that it is inspired by ancient Egyptian mystery system and culture.
Okay, got it.
And what you find in ancient Egypt, you'll find to a degree in other African systems.
Okay.
So they just haven't gotten into the level of making houses around the world. The closest that come to that is the Yoruba Ifa tradition in terms of individual elays.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All righty, let me go. Over time, I was only supposed to do 2 hours. I'll take a few more questions and then I'm in the conversation. So, sorry, what do you think will be the phenomenon or construct will be to unite continental Africans economically and politically? Well, first there has to be a a United States of Africa. And I like what Sheikh Anta Diop did in his text, Black Africa, an Economic and Cultural Basis for a Federated State. I highly recommend that book. It's a thin book. It's a quick read, but it's very powerful and impactful. And so in that text, he kind of outlines exactly the answer to your question. And so what's going to happen is that there's going to have to be an agreed upon universal African language that everybody could communicate with. And then they're going to have to simply unite the states, the individual states, and redraw borders. And once they're able to do that and decide on the collective form of government, they'll be good to go. And in that text, you'll also see that he talks about creating a new culture, he called it an Afro-American culture, and not like African-American as the ethnic group here in the United States, like an Afro-American, like a common culture between the continent of Africa and the Africans here in America. So he stated this in his one of his interviews when he came to the United States and visited Morehouse and visited DC. So at the back of the book of Black Africa, an Economic and Cultural Basis for a Federated State, one of those interviews is placed in the back, and I think he discusses it there, as well as you can find it in Ivan van Sertima's book on or journal on Sheikh Anta Diop as well. Let's see. Do you have any evidence that Buddhism began in Africa before going to India? Nope. That's my answer. Nope. Sorry, what's your thoughts on the Texas abortion law. My official stance is that it's a good thing for the Black community because it'll teach our people to be more responsible. What's yours? I'm not sure about the quote unquote abortion law. I have an idea of what you're talking about, but I don't know the depths because I don't think it's necessarily about abortion per se, but it's some other law that they're trying to stick in there that like it has to deal with something about with a fine or possible jail time. But I think this is like it has to deal with a particular case about like if the life of the body is in danger at the hospital. Like I don't know all the details. I remember hearing it some time ago, like when I was in Texas just a few months ago, like that being a big thing, but I don't remember all the details. So I can't give an accurate answer on that. But I do kind of know what you're talking about in terms of that particular issue. It says, when's the trip to Congo, Africa in general? Um, Look, I'm trying to get this fundraiser, complete, and getting to the 5,000 mark so I can do the trailer because for the documentary film, it's probably going to cost 100,000 to complete, and that includes all the travel to Egypt, Congo, South Africa, even within the United States, and editing and the like. It's just going to be a bunch. So this is why we're doing the proof of concept trailer first, so that we could do the bigger fundraiser. But once I get a sufficient amount to do the Congo, that's the first place that I want to go. Hopefully, I can. I'm trying to budget to see how much would it be to go into the Congo and then just go into South Africa at once and do just one shooting, or if coming back separate at separate times, how much more would that be and the like. So I'm still trying to figure out the budget of that, but hopefully within the next year and a half, we'll be in the Congo. Sister Felicia's about to go to the Congo with the Hoppy film to go interview Dr. Rabinga. So I'm jealous of that, and so we'll definitely keep you updated. This is I can dig it. Appreciate that. So I think I went through the vast majority of the questions, and so I do appreciate each and every one of you for joining the conversation. I'm sorry I'm in the dark, so next time I come in here, I'll make sure that I have my other light right in the front here, because it's the lights up here, but you know how those old school university lights are, or school lights. It's not very well, and they're all on top of me and behind me, so I'm kind of dark. Then I got this little light, but it's not doing much of anything. This is one that I have on my camera, but too late for that now. But I do appreciate everyone who came on the program, who came on live. Sunchild, Jima, our good brother, who else came on? I forgot already. Well, I'll make sure that I shout them out again next time. But everyone who has made themselves known, everyone who's made a donation, and I saw a donation from Mr. Holmes, and I want to say thank you for the CashApp donation. I want to make sure it doesn't show up here, but I want to make sure that I give you a shout out if you're still listening. And so thank each and every one of you for coming on. So we'll probably have a good interview this week, and I'm still settling in. And so once I settle in, and we'll get the ball rolling again. So make sure that y'all visit the Hoppy Film website to get your One Africa Power and Unity conference tickets. And again, it's going to be April the 29th, April the 30th and May the 1st. And it will be live in Detroit. And if you can't make it live in Detroit, you can catch it on the stream. And so visit the hoppyfilm.com link at the bottom, and you will be in the place to be. And so with that said, y'all can find me on these various social media platforms, and I will see you later. Peace.